Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So taking a look at Special Booster 1.5 and seeing all of the new powerful cards that we're getting in that set, we definitely are getting some really interesting cards to be playing around with. One of them is going to be Craniamon and his addition or inclusion into a brand new version of Black Blockers, and he definitely is a really powerful card that's doing a whole lot for the Black Blockers deck and is definitely going to be a mainstay in that deck just because of all of the extra power and protection this card provides for the deck overall. So going over the deck, starting with the Digitama, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Kapurimon. So Kapurimon is still going to be the main Digitama of the deck just because he has this nice inheritable of during your turn. While this Digimon has Reboot, it gets plus 1000 DP. So right now this is just the best Digitama that we have. We still are going to be playing with some Reboot synergy cards just because Blocker and Reboot are 2 mechanics that go very well together. So we definitely want Kapurimon just to increase the power of that synergy. And then the last Digitama of the deck is going to be 1 copy of Kakkinmon. So Kakkinmon is a really nice Digitama just because it has the nice inheritable ability of a when attacking ability, where once per turn, if this Digimon is level 7, then you get to gain 1 memory. So we are playing a few level 7s in the deck, and you could possibly think about playing more level 7s just because of Kakkinmon, and being able to manipulate the memory is definitely something really good because black isn't the most efficient of colors. Next, on to the rookies. I'm going to be running 4 copies of Gotsumon sheerly for the fact that he is a rookie blocker, which, again, the whole theme of the deck is black blockers to try to wall the opponent out. So the fact that we have a blocker on the rookie stage is definitely really nice. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of ToyAgumon. So ToyAgumon is a really powerful Digimon for this deck to be playing around with just because he gives the inheritable ability of Reboot. So Reboot is the big way that we are actually going to be able to aggress and defend at the same time in this deck, just because Reboot is the ability where we could unsuspend our Digimon during the opponent's phase. So the whole idea is we're going to attack during our phase, then unsuspend during the opponent's phase, so that way we could ready them up so that way they could block and attack. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Commandramon. So Commandramon is a pretty solid Digimon just because he is that value vanilla rookie, where you know the drill. 2 to play, 0 to evolve is pretty decent. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Chuumon. So Chuumon is a pretty decent rookie just because he has this nice ability where during both players' turns, your opponent can't gain memory except by tamer effects. So this really tries to shut out the opponent from possibly gaining some memory to extend their plays or do some really cheeky things to just make more powerful plays happen overall. And the fact that we have Chuumon to just stop that is really nice, because if he's just sitting on the field passively because we're just building a wall to tell the opponent they can't really aggress, he's just another good card just to be sitting on, just because he'll start limiting what the opponent could possibly do depending on the matchup. Next, on to the champions. I'm going to be running 4 copies of Greymon. So this Greymon is pretty nice because he has the ability to give your Digimon with Reboot jamming. So Reboot is already a really solid ability that we want to be playing around with, and the fact that we have this card to give our Reboot Digimon jamming just make them even that more threatening, just because jamming is pretty powerful where they're going to always win security checks against the opponent's security Digimon. So that way they could safely aggress onto the opponent. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Guardromon. So Guardromon is a pretty solid Digimon just because he is another blocker for the deck, and then on top of which he has the ability of your Digimon can't attack, but that's okay just because he has some slightly higher DP than a lot of other champions in the game, so he could potentially wall out not only just champions, but certain ultimates as well. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Tankmon. So Tankmon is really only in here just because he has an evo cost of 1, but we also do care about the fact that he has 6000 DP, so that way we can at least try to utilize him more aggressively than we could if we were, say, running Numamon. But if you really wanted to run Numamon, he is just another efficiency tool, and that's really what the slot is being used for, is just that efficiency tool to get up into your higher stages that much faster. Next, on to the ultimates, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Andromon. So Andromon is a pretty decent Digimon just because he has the blocker ability. So he doesn't have any downside to attacking, so that way if we pair him up with Reboot and Jamming, then he could be really, really aggressive really, really early on, while still being able to defend all at the same time, and that just synergy just makes Andromon a really decent card to be playing around with. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 4 copies of MetalGreymon. So MetalGreymon is in here just because he has the Reboot ability himself, so he could be a rather aggressive Digimon if we need him to be, just because of the Reboot ability. But on top of him having the Reboot ability, he also has the Inheritable ability where during your turn, while this Digimon has Reboot, then it gains Security Attack +1. So this is what allows us to be even more aggressive, just because whatever we're giving Reboot to, or whatever has Reboot, if it Digivolves up with him, will get Security Attack +1, so that way it could deal even more damage, so that way we could try to close out games even faster than we could normally. Next, on to the Megas, I'm going to be running 4 copies of WarGreymon. So WarGreymon is a really fantastic Digimon for the deck to be playing around with, just because he has 2 very powerful abilities. So his first ability is Blocker. So obviously this is a black blocker based deck, so we want to have as many powerful blockers as we possibly can. So WarGreymon being a mega level Digimon with blocker is definitely really, really good. And then on top of which he also has the Reboot ability natively, so that way we don't really need to build him up with ToyAgumon, and we could use some of the other support cards while we use ToyAgumon to save him for something a little bit more important. But the fact that he has both blocker and Reboot natively just make him really, really powerful, just because we don't have to work as hard to build up a really powerful Digimon. Next, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Machinedramon. So Machinedramon is more of a tech card, and this card can be really slotted with anything you want. I just felt like Machinedramon is a pretty decent Digimon to be utilizing for the deck, because he is another mega level Digimon with the blocker ability. So again, if the whole point is just trying to play a whole bunch of blockers, then Machinedramon just makes sense to play. On top of which, Machinedramon has a very powerful on-play ability, where we get to de-digivolve 2 of the opponent's Digimon by 2 stages. So this is really, really good, just because we are trying to shrink the opponent's Digimon down, so that way we could block them easier or make it harder for them to come back because they needed whatever mega or ultimate level Digimon that they were on, and we turn that into a smaller Digimon, so now they're going to have to start trying to rebuild without those cards. So Machinedramon is overall just a really fantastic tech card for the deck to be playing with. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Craniamon. So Craniamon is the main Digimon of the deck, because he just has so much support and synergy with blockers as a whole. So once we get a Craniamon out, the opponent is really going to start sweating, because he is another mega level with blocker. So he also can start walling the opponent out. If they can't really do anything, then he's just going to be an absolute nightmare for the opponent to deal with. And then on top of which, he has another powerful ability outside of the blocker ability himself, where during both players' turns, your Digimon with blocker cannot be deleted by the opponent's card effects. So this is the big level of protection that we're looking to try to utilize, just because removal type abilities are very, very prominent in the game. Yes, it still has a whole bunch of different vulnerabilities, it just can't be deleted, but again, not being able to be deleted is still very, very powerful for the deck to be playing around with. And then this extends to all of your Digimon with blocker, so the faster you could get a Craniamon out and just sit on a Craniamon, the harder it is for the opponents to just be able to deal with your Digimon. And then the last mega of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Omnimon Alter S. So we are going to be playing a level 7, and Omnimon Alter S just looks like the most powerful level 7 that we have access to that's really easy to play. So he is an Omnimon, so he has some really powerful stats, being a level 7, where he costs 6 to evolve off of red or black, and then on top of which his 15,000 DP is just very, very powerful, and then on top of which he has another really powerful when digivolving ability, where we get to de-digivolve 1 on all of the opponent's Digimon, and then any of their Digimon that have 5,000 DP or less get deleted after that de-digivolve. So this is the big board wipe of the deck, where we're trying to wall the opponent out, and if they're trying to build a wide board state to handle our blockers and try to get around our blockers, then we just digivolve up into Omnimon Alter S, and then we get to de-digivolve all of their Digimon and potentially delete them, which is pretty powerful. And then on top of that, he has a really nice when attacking ability where you get to make this Digimon unblockable for the turn by returning a level 6 Digimon from its evolution source to your hand. So if we're trying to aggress onto the opponent and they also have a blocker, then being able to make Omnimon Alter S unblockable to close out games is definitely something really powerful and something we're definitely looking at utilizing. Next, on to the Tamers, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Tai Kamiya. So this version of Tai Kamiya is pretty decent because he is the memory fixing tamer of the deck, where if we have 2 or less memory, then it gets set to 3. So always being at 3 memory is really nice because it could make a lot of our plays more efficient than they normally would be before. And then on top of which, he also has another really powerful ability where during your opponent's turn, all of your black Digimon get plus 1000 DP. So that's really important because we could make our blockers even stronger during the opponent's turn, which can make them even harder to deal with than they could before, and they could wall out more Digimon than they possibly could before just because of that DP boost. And then the last tamer of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Joe. So Joe is a really decent tamer just because he has a very low play cost, so he's a lot more efficient of a tamer to play than, say, Tai. And then he has the really powerful ability where at the start of our turn, if we have a Digimon with blocker in play, then we get to gain 1 memory. So this is the main reason why we're playing this card, is because the deck really isn't super memory efficient, and the fact that we have both Tai as a memory fixing tamer and Joe to just give us memory definitely make us a lot more memory efficient, and definitely are really powerful cards to be playing around with, just because that they can make our plays that much more stronger because they are manipulating the memory for us. And if we have multiple Joes out on the field, then their abilities do stack and we could just gain a whole bunch of memory passively. And then there's still a whole bunch of other tools and tech cards that you could think about utilizing depending on how you want to build the deck and what you want to prioritize. So you could think about using the promo version of Kapurimon just because he has a nice inheritable ability where during the opponent's turn, this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP. You could also think about utilizing Clockmon because it's basically the same card except on a different level. And again, the whole point is to try to utilize those 2 cards to just DP boost your Digimon during the opponent's turn to make it harder for them to get over your blockers. Then another really fantastic card you can think about utilizing is Garurumon. So Garurumon is really nice because he has the reboot ability natively, so he still works and synergizes with the deck and all of the reboot cards that we've been playing around with, so that's always really nice. And then on top of which, he has a really powerful Wed Digivolving ability, which is really what we're trying to utilize the card for, where we get to reveal the top card for each of the opponent's Digimon that they have in play, and then we get to play 1 black or red Digimon that's level 5 or less among them for free. So this is really powerful because the whole idea is if the opponent is just going to have a field of Digimon and they can't really do anything with it because we have a whole bunch of blockers just stopping them, then we can Digivolve into Garurumon, and then we get more possible search potential and power to just be able to play a level 5 or lower Digimon, and more often than not we're looking for another blocker, so that way we could just continue walling the opponent out while we sit on Garurumon to try to swing for the game. Then we could think about utilizing Volcanicdramon. So Volcanicdramon is doing something very similar to what we want out of Alter S, where he has this nice ability where we get to delete all of the opponent's Digimon with 4000 DP or less. So if they're trying to build a wide board state, then slamming down a Volcanicdramon is really powerful just because we could potentially delete all of those Digimon. So that's just really good, on top of which he has the native ability of security attack +1, so he can provide a lot of extra pressure onto the opponent's security just alone. And then on top of which he is a red Digimon with an on-play ability, so we're not really looking to try to Digivolve up into him, we're just looking to slam him down at the right opportunity to ruin the opponent's day. And then because we are playing Alter S as the main level 7 we want to utilize, then we could even Digivolve him into Alter S and have that synergy as well. Now, you could also think about utilizing BlitzGreymon. So BlitzGreymon is another really powerful Digimon because he could Digivolve off of black or red. So even though we are running basically a primary black deck, we could just splash in BlitzGreymon just because we could still Digivolve up into him. We are losing out on the black synergy cards, but again, we're looking to be aggressive with BlitzGreymon if we're trying to utilize this card because he has the piercing ability. So piercing is really, really powerful because it allows you to just be more aggressive, because if you're attacking either the opponent's Digimon or attacking their security and they have to block with the blocker ability, then we still are going to be able to deal security damage to them while removing that Digimon at the same time, as long as BlitzGreymon is able to live through the battle. And that's just pretty powerful of an ability to have, on top of which the primary reason why we would want to play him is because he has a nice when Digivolving ability of de-Digivolving 2 on one of the opponent's Digimon. So again, similar reasons to why we are currently running Machinedramon. We want a little bit of de-Digivolving just to try to deal with some of the opponent's Digimon, and allows us to deal with some problematic Digimon we couldn't deal with otherwise, so having de-Digivolve on Blitz is definitely really nice to have. And then because we are also playing Alter S, we could still think about utilizing the fact that he is red to Digivolve up into Alter S if we so choose. We could also think about utilizing Millenniumon. So Millenniumon is another really powerful level 7 Digimon that we could deal with. This time he primarily Digivolves off of black, so if we are running Millenniumon, then we can't really run any of the red Digimon because we lose out on the potential to Digivolve into our level 7s. But Millenniumon is still very, very powerful because he has a nice removal ability where when Digivolving, we get to return one of your opponent's Digimon to the bottom of their deck, and then we get to trash all of their Digivolution sources. So just, again, the removal option on him is really, really good. And then on top of which, he also is a really sticky body and can be really hard to get rid of because of his On Deletion ability. So his On Deletion ability is if this card has any Digivolution cards, then we get to play this card from our trash for free. So him being able to revive himself as long as he has an evolution source is really, really powerful, just because it allows him to be very, very hard to deal with. Then we do have a nice slew of different option cards if you want to utilize any option cards. I just found that option cards are a little bit hard to run in the deck just because I prefer trying to run the efficiency of the tamers that allow us to do more. But you definitely could tweak and tune the deck to utilize a couple of option cards. So Atomic Ray is really nice because it has the main ability of unsuspending one of our Digimon with blocker. So this way we could get multi-attacks in if we really want to. And then on top of which, it also has the nice security ability where we get to unsuspend all of our Digimon with blocker and they gain plus 5,000 DP for the turn. So again, this is just a pretty decent card to be utilizing because it has a whole bunch of blocker synergy. We could also think about utilizing Infinity Cannon just because being able to de-Digivolve from the security is really, really nice of an option to have. So you could also think about utilizing Spider Shot if you really want to fit the same role, but have a more cost-efficient card. But the main ability of being able to de-Digivolve 4 is really, really powerful because if they built up a really strong stack, then this card basically just tears that stack down all the way down to a rookie level, and that's just pretty powerful. You could also think about utilizing Breath of the Gods. So I think this is probably the best option card that you could utilize if you're utilizing any option cards, because it has a relatively low play cost, which is pretty decent, and then it has a very powerful main ability and security ability. So its main ability is one of our Digimon gains Reboot, and then this Digimon gains the ability where it can't have its DP reduced, return to hand, or deck until the end of the opponent's next turn. So this just allows you to give one of your Digimon almost absolute protection, pair this up with a Craniamon on the field, and it is pretty much almost absolute protection, and the only thing that would be able to interact with your Digimon is to be able to delete it by battle. And it's just pretty powerful at limiting and reducing the amount of options that the opponent has to interact with your Digimon. And then its security ability is also really, really insane, where your opponent's Digimon can't attack a player for the turn. So this means they can't attack into your security either, because attacking the player and the security is the same thing. So being able to just take away all of the opponent's potential attacks is, again, just a very, very powerful thing for the deck to be doing. Then you could think about utilizing Beast Cyclone. So Beast Cyclone is just a very powerful option card just because it makes all of our Digimon a lot more aggressive because of its main ability where all of our Digimon with blocker or reboot gain security attack +1. So if we really want to try to close out the game and we're definitely in a very good board state, then we could just play Beast Cyclone and then just to be able to wipe all of the opponent's security out in a single turn and potentially kill them, just because this is interacting with basically all of the Digimon that we are playing with. So again, it's just another very powerful option card, and it has a nice security ability of being able to add this card to your hand, so that way you could utilize when you want to play this card. And then if you are going to be splashing in some red cards and a small little red package, you could also think about using Gaia Force, because it's Gaia Force. Like, just being able to delete one of the opponent's Digimon is very, very powerful. So for the most part, this is a pretty solid shell for the Black Blockers deck, and I definitely think it's a really fun and interesting deck just because it's doing something different than a whole bunch of other decks in Digimon, where you're just trying to build up a really powerful board state and basically just wall the opponent out of the game, so that way they can't really aggress onto your security without losing their Digimon, and there's just a whole bunch of very powerful tech and control tools that they have that they could utilize to make that job easier, or you could tech it to be more aggressive. It just all depends on what you want out of the deck and how you want to play. But regardless, this is still a very, very powerful deck, and it's definitely a really interesting deck. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, I'll have the deck list down in the description below, and feel free to leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.